On April 24, 1944, at an altitude of 24,000 feet over Brandenburg, Major Rau struggled to draw breath through his oxygen mask as he clung to his seat in the Messerschmitt Bf-9G6. His disbelief grew as he watched an American fighter persistently shadowing him during a steep dive maneuver. The intercom buzzed with frantic voices from other pilots of Yakushita 11 who had dominated European airspace since 1940, but now sounded like inexperienced flyers. How is this possible? For 3 years, Major Rau had adhered to a strict code of aerial combat tactics that presumed American fighters could not keep pace with German pilots over their own territory due to inferior range and performance capabilities. Yet the P-51 Mustang, closing in on his wingman, challenged every assumption that had safeguarded German aviators since 1941. Its Packard-built Merlin engine roared menacingly at an altitude where American aircraft typically struggled for oxygen. With only 600 meters left to reach its base in England, the Mustang still possessed enough fuel for another hour of combat and a safe return trip. Major Rau's own fuel gauge indicated he had just 15 minutes before reaching Brandenburg. The once unassailable principles governing air superiority factors such as distance, altitude, and endurance had suddenly shifted against Germany that morning. The tables had turned. The hunters were now on the run over their capital city. What Major Rau witnessed was not just the emergence of a formidable new American fighter, but also the early signs of the Luftwaffe's impending downfall. Within 1 year, nearly 3/4 of its pilots would be lost along with 90% of its seasoned commanders, and complete air supremacy over Germany would slip away entirely. This crisis had been brewing since August 17, 1943, when a single day saw the U.S. Air Force lose 60 B-7 flying fortresses during an assault on Schweinfurt and Regensburg. The strategic bombing campaign's mathematics had reached a critical turning point by that time. American bombers were experiencing losses ranging from 24% to 25% during deep penetration missions, while German fighter production continued to grow despite these efforts. General Major Adolf Galland and General Diegfleger reviewed the statistics with satisfaction at their Berlin headquarters. The Americans were losing more aircraft than they could replace due to the time needed to train new crews. Each B-17 bomber carried 10 highly trained specialists who required extensive preparation. For every German fighter pilot lost, 10 crew members from American bombers were being killed, giving Germany a significant advantage in this exchange rate. In September 1943, Galland advised his staff that the Americans must turn back at Aachen because their fighters lacked the range to escort beyond the Rhine. This allowed the Germans to focus their forces and attack the bombers once the escorts had retreated, leading to devastating results for the Allied bombing campaign. On October 14, 1943, known as Black Thursday, the 8th Air Force lost 60 bombers and 640 crew members during a raid on Schweinfurt. The offensive was halted for 4 months with no major penetrations into Germany by American forces. The Luftwaffe seemed to have gained air superiority through the strategic advantage of geography. However, unbeknownst to the jubilant German pilots, an incredible fusion of engineering expertise and industrial capabilities was already reversing their success. The North American P-51 Mustang had its origins in a British specification issued in April 1940. Designed within just 102 days, with the prototype flying only 14 days after contract signing, an unprecedented development pace elsewhere. Initially powered by the Allison V72-710 engine, early versions of the Mustang performed poorly above 15,000 feet, exactly where escort duties were most critical. However, in April 1942, Rolls-Royce test pilot Ronald Harker proposed fitting the aircraft with a Merlin engine. This combination of American aerodynamics and British power would create what many considered to be the war's most formidable fighter aircraft. Production of the Merlin engine began in Detroit by the Packard Motor Company in August 1941, employing American mass production techniques to produce high-quality components for this advanced technology. By the end of 1943, Packard was manufacturing hundreds of Merlin engines every month, each generating around 11650 horsepower at high altitudes where German pilots traditionally felt most secure. In July 1942, Colonel Thomas Hitchcock, an American military attaché in London and a former World War I pilot, wrote a prescient report stating that the P-51 equipped with the Merlin engine would surpass any existing fighter aircraft above 25,000 feet. Furthermore, it had the capability to escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. This single plane could completely alter the strategic landscape in Europe. On December 1, 1943, a formation of Junkers Ju-87 Stukas from Yugoslavia II approached American bombers near Solingen, confident that their escorts had already departed. The pilots were seasoned veterans with thousands of combined victories, employing an attack pattern they had honed over the past 18 months. As the P-47 Thunderbolts waved off the bombers and withdrew, urgent messages crackled through German radio frequencies. Indians still with the bombers, a new type providing escort cover. P-51 Mustangs from the 344th Fighter Group, known as the Pioneer Mustang Group, had stayed behind to protect the bombers. Their drop tanks extended their range by an additional 150 miles, allowing them to maintain coverage deep into German territory. The German pilots, accustomed to unopposed attacks on unescorted bombers for 18 months, were psychologically unprepared for encountering fighter opposition at such distances. On December 13, 1943, the strategic shift was further solidified with a major raid escorted by substantial numbers of P-51s. This mission penetrated as far as Kiel, located 4,204 miles from the nearest Allied base. 16 P-51Bs from the 304th Fighter Group not only safeguarded the bombers, but also undertook aggressive fighter sweeps to seek out and engage German aircraft. Major Georg Peter Shaw Ada commanded 3 Jagdgeschwader 1 squadrons. A seasoned veteran with 78 aerial victories, Ada had devised specific tactics for each type of Allied fighter encountered. While P-47s could be outmaneuvered at high altitudes, the new Mustang presented a formidable challenge. The Spitfire had limited range. In contrast, while the P-38 Lightning struggled to match German fighters in turns, the P-51 demonstrated exceptional versatility. The first encounter occurred at an altitude of 7,500 meters. Eder then reported back to Jagdkorps headquarters. At this height, enemy aircraft maintained superior speed and maneuverability compared to our B-17Gs. I chased my target for about 30 kilometers before fuel constraints forced me to land. The enemy continued their escort mission without showing any signs of fuel limitations. On December 20th, Oberfeldwebel Heinz Koka, a highly decorated ace with J.G. Aven, who had achieved 33 victories, noted in his diary that the appearance of American fighters over Hanover was unsettling everyone. Prior to this, we would leisurely take off when bombers were approaching, confident that we could quickly gain altitude and position ourselves advantageously. Now, immediate climbing is necessary to avoid being engaged by escorts. The arrival of the P-51B in January 1944 sent shockwaves through German intelligence once they obtained accurate performance data. This aircraft boasted a top speed of 440 mph at 30,000 feet, faster than any German fighter within its operational range. With drop tanks, it could fly up to 2,800 miles, double the distance achievable by any German fighter. Its service ceiling was an impressive 42,000 feet, far above the comfortable operating altitude for most German pilots. Additionally, it had a climb rate of 340.75 feet per minute, surpassing the B-59G's capabilities beyond 20,000 feet. The P-51 was also equipped with 650 caliber machine guns, carrying 1.888 rounds each, sufficient ammunition for sustained combat engagements. The Laminina flow wing on the Mustang offered an unparalleled level of efficiency, with its design ensuring a smooth airflow up to 60% of its chord length, which reduced drag by 30% compared to traditional wings. This breakthrough enabled greater speed and range, making long-distance escort missions feasible for the first time. From February 20th through the 25th in 1944, known as Big Week, American air power was unleashed on German aircraft manufacturing facilities. Over 1,000 bombers supported by nearly 900 fighters, including approximately 150 51Bs, conducted coordinated strikes against factories across Germany. For the first time, U.S. fighter planes played an offensive role rather than just serving as escorts. The Luftwaffe suffered significant losses during this period, losing around 355 aircraft and at least 100 seasoned pilots, many of whom were formation leaders, whose tactical expertise was crucial to maintaining German air superiority. March 4th. 1944 marked a pivotal moment when American bombers escorted by P-51 Mustangs, P-38 Lightnings, and P-47 Thunderbolts carried out the first raid on Berlin. Approximately 660 B-17 and B-24 aircraft darkened the skies over the German capital during this operation. Adolf Galland personally led a makeshift force of B-17Gs against the American assault. In his post-battle report to Goering, he candidly stated that the Luftwaffe was outnumbered 3-1 by escort fighters. The Mustangs had an altitude and speed advantage as well as superior tactics. They managed to damage only 3 bombers before being forced to disperse. Galland recounted how he was pursued for 50 kilometers by 2 American pilots, who seemed to have ample fuel, allowing them to play cat and mouse with him. The appearance of American fighters over Berlin shattered any remaining illusions of German air superiority. Civilians told that the Luftwaffe was winning, watched in disbelief as silver Mustangs circled above the Brandenburg Gate. The regime's credibility had deteriorated further due to military setbacks. By April 1944, P-51 pilots had devised a highly effective new tactic. Upon completing their escort missions, they would dive to treetop level and attack any targets of opportunity on their return journey. German airfields, previously considered safe, once Allied formations had passed overhead, now became sites of intense destruction. On April 13, 1944, this new reality was vividly demonstrated when 42 Mustangs from the 4th Fighter Group escorted bombers to Schweinfurt and then descended on German airfields across Bavaria upon their return. In just half an hour of concentrated strafing, they obliterated 51 aircraft on the ground, damaged another 23, killed numerous ground personnel, and destroyed invaluable maintenance facilities. By May 1944, the Luftwaffe was grappling with a severe pilot shortage. Monthly losses surpassed 25% of its operational strength, while training programs produced replacements who were often inadequately prepared. In 1944, the average German fighter pilot received between 110 and 160 flight hours before entering combat, compared to American pilots who had 400 hours of training and their counterparts from 1941, who averaged 250 hours. By early 1945, some German pilots were being sent into combat with as little as 80 total flight hours. Johannes Steinhoff, the commander of JG-70, documented this crisis. "We are receiving children as replacements, boys aged 19 with minimal training and no experience flying above 5,000 meters, never having fired at a moving target or performed hygienic maneuvers. We must send them against American pilots who have had 400 hours of training, many of whom also have combat experience." Captain Don Gentile of the 4th Fighter Group, who would go on to achieve 21 aerial victories, noted, "By spring 1944, half the German pilots we encountered were easy targets. They flew predictable patterns, failed to use clouds for cover, and panicked when engaged. The experienced pilots were still dangerous, but they became increasingly rare." And the Allied bombing campaign targeting German oil plants escalated in May 1944, exacerbating an existing crisis and amplifying the P-51's strengths. Aviation fuel production in Germany fell from 80,000 tons in April to just 20,000 tons by September. This decline forced a reduction of training flights until they were eventually halted entirely. Combat missions became highly selective, confined to critical engagements only. At the same time, American pilots conducted extensive training exercises over German territory. P-51 squadrons carried out fighter sweeps and offensive patrols aimed at locating and neutralizing enemy aircraft. Thanks to their ample fuel supplies, these pilots could patrol above German airfields for extended periods, striking at adversaries when they were most susceptible during takeoffs or landings. In the summer of 1944, Germany introduced the Messerschmitt Me-26-2 jet fighter, which offered a brief glimmer of hope. Capable of reaching speeds up to 500 mph, it was roughly 100 mph faster than the P-500D model. Hitler saw this as a potential game-changer in the air war. However, American pilots swiftly devised strategies to counteract these jets. They would hover near Mi-266-2 bases and ambush them during takeoffs or landings when their speed was considerably reduced. Despite its advanced technology, several operational challenges limited the effectiveness of the Mi-260. The jet relied on high-quality fuel that was increasingly scarce due to Allied bombings. Its engines required frequent replacements every 10 to 25 hours, a task made difficult by disrupted supply chains. Furthermore, the aircraft needed experienced pilots for optimal performance. Yet the Luftwaffe had few veteran flyers left. Notable Mi-262 pilots such as Franz Schall and George Peter Adam achieved some individual successes. Schall claimed 10 P-51 kills, while Adam shot down 9 among his 12 total victories. Yet these triumphs did not translate into strategic advantages. For each Mustang lost, many more American fighters continued to dominate the skies. By late autumn 1944, P-51 Mustangs had redirected their efforts towards targeting Germany's vital transportation infrastructure. Flying in squadron formations, they targeted locomotives, rail yards, bridges, and canal locks with precision. This disruption severely impacted the German economy, which relied heavily on its railway system, leading to a systematic breakdown of essential services. On September 11, 1944, a single day saw 36 P-51s from the 35th 7th Fighter Group obliterate 81 locomotives. Throughout the conflict, this group would amass an impressive total of 95 air victories, surpassing all other P-51 squadrons within the 8th Air Force. Reich Minister Albert Speer recorded in his diary that American fighters have achieved what our heavy bombers could not, a complete disruption of transportation. Coal supplies failed to reach power plants, industrial parts stopped arriving at factories, and food delivery systems collapsed. Beyond statistical achievements and strategic impacts, the P-51's dominance had profound psychological effects on German pilots. Elite warriors who initially entered service with unwavering confidence found their worldviews shattered as they witnessed relentless destruction by Mustang pilots. The Americans' aggressive tactics, coupled with superior numbers and training, instilled fear and demoralization among their adversaries. German fighter pilots developed a dark humor to cope with the grim reality of their situation. A popular joke went around: what does a German pilot need for an Iron Cross? A P-51 escort to the cemetery. This black comedy concealed deep feelings of despair and hopelessness. On April 7, 1945, in one of the Luftwaffe's last major operations known as Sonderkommando Ala, about 1880 to 200 BFA-10-9s, manned primarily by inexperienced volunteers, undertook a desperate ramming mission against American bombers in what amounted to a suicide attack. The outcome was devastating. American fighter pilots reported destroying around 30 to 140 German aircraft while suffering minimal losses themselves. By April 1945, the Luftwaffe had effectively ceased functioning as an effective fighting force, despite retaining some aircraft and pilots. The morale of its members had deteriorated to such a degree that unit commanders no longer issued mission orders. Once feared across Europe, the Luftwaffe was now reduced to concealing its surviving planes. The full impact of the P-51 Mustang can be seen in these statistics. Production total, 1558-6 aircraft. Aerial combat victories confirmed, 4, 50 enemy aircraft. Grounded enemy aircraft destroyed, 4, 1 confirmed. Total losses to all causes, 251 P-51s. Kill ratio in aerial combat, approximately 346 to 1. German pilot casualties, Western Front, 1944. Over 8,000 killed or missing. January to May 1945, over 3,000 killed or missing. Luftwaffe strength decline, January 1944, approximately 1,600 operational fighters. June 1944, 1,4080 operational fighters. January 1945, 1,000 operational fighters. April 1945, 325 operational fighters. Training duration differences. American pilots in 1944-45 received over 400 hours of training before entering combat. In early 1944, German pilots accumulated between 116 and 220 hours. By late 1944, this range decreased to 116 hours. Some German pilots in 1945 had as little as 80 flight hours before engaging in combat. Military experts widely recognize the P-51 Mustang's pivotal role in securing Allied air superiority. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey concluded that the P-51, more than any other aircraft, was instrumental in achieving air supremacy over Europe. This fighter made possible three crucial accomplishments: sustaining the daylight strategic bombing campaign, establishing air superiority prior to D-Day, and systematically destroying German transportation and oil infrastructure. North American Aviation's production efforts deserve recognition, as they manufactured one complete Mustang every 90 minutes at peak output. The Inglewood and Dallas plants combined employed tens of thousands of workers, with women making up approximately 40% of the workforce. In contrast to German manufacturing capabilities, which are still debated due to incomplete records, American fighter production was significantly higher. The United States alone produced more P-51s than Germany did for all single-engine fighter types combined in 1944 and 1945. The comprehensive training regimen of the U.S. Army Air Forces also played a critical role alongside the aircraft itself. By 1944, this program was one of history's largest educational initiatives. Each pilot underwent primary training, 65 hours, basic training, 75 hours, advanced training, 100 hours, and operational training, at least 60 hours. This systematic approach ensured that pilots arrived at combat units with over 400 flight hours, including extensive practice in gunnery, formation flying, and tactical maneuvers. Meanwhile, German pilots increasingly arrived at frontline units with insufficient experience to handle their aircraft effectively, let alone engage in combat proficiently. The P-51's impact transcended World War II, showcasing that air superiority is derived from a combination of systemic advantages: rigorous training, efficient production, robust logistics, and the integration of advanced technology, rather than being solely dependent on individual pilot skill or aircraft performance. Even Adolf Galland, a renowned former Luftwaffe ace, acknowledged that while the P-51 may not have been superior in every aspect compared to German fighters, it was effective across all critical areas, manufactured in large quantities, flown by highly trained pilots, and supported by abundant resources, making it an unbeatable force. During a 1975 NATO conference, General Günter Röhl, who claimed 2075 aerial victories, reflected on the P-51's profound influence. While the Germans focused on individual combat skills and tactical triumphs, the Americans emphasized systems, production capabilities, and strategic dominance, ultimately winning a different kind of war. This shift was complete. The Luftwaffe that had swept across Europe from 1939 to 1941, nearly securing victory over Britain and dominating the Eastern Front, was systematically dismantled by American industrial democracy manifesting in the air. The P-51 Mustang served as a tool for this destruction, but the true weapon lay in the society that produced it, a nation capable of designing an aircraft within 1 to 2 days, manufacturing more than 15,000 units, training thousands of pilots to professional standards, and projecting its power across vast distances to achieve total air superiority. In 1943, German pilots underestimated American fighters, because they failed to recognize the comprehensive industrial might behind them. They viewed aircraft without seeing assembly lines, counted individual pilots instead of training programs, measured range rather than industrial capacity. By the time they comprehended the true nature of American power, it was already too late. The tables had turned, and now it was the Mustangs that dominated European airspace as the Luftwaffe faced its demise. This destruction went beyond a mere military setback. It showcased how democracies, when fully engaged, could produce capabilities surpassing those of totalitarian regimes. Ultimately, the P-51 Mustang demonstrated that triumph in modern warfare did not stem from sheer warrior spirit or racial dominance, but rather from practical elements such as industrial output, methodical training, and logistical prowess. German pilots were caught off guard by the power of the P-51, because they failed to anticipate the boundless productive might of American democracy. All of their realization came only through the barrel of 50 caliber machine guns, firing down upon them from above the smoldering remnants of Nazi Germany.